Y'all ready?
Five years ago, Jose Fernández, Eduardo Rivero, and Emilio Macias Jr. went for a boat ride on the Miami River. According to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, they traveled out through Government Cut and into the Atlantic Ocean. While speeding back to Government Cut, their boat, named Caught Looking, which belonged to Jose Fernández, plowed into the North Jetty, killing all three of the young men on board. Rivero was 25, Macias was 27, Fernández was 24. That tragic accident was unequivocally the worst moment in Marlins history, but it transcended the Marlins fan base. It transcended the South Florida community. It transcended Major League Baseball. It transcended all of sports. To the families of the deceased, please know that we are always thinking of you. Former Marlins president David Sampson, he knew Jose better than any of us had the opportunity to know him. And I think he's put it best through the years in describing Jose as being intoxicated by his freedom. As someone that grew up in Cuba, he didn't have that freedom, and he was denied of it on several attempts to get out of Cuba before he was finally successful. And once he got there, he lived by that mantra. In so many ways, it was a positive. You could see it in the way that he performed on the mound, the way he treated teammates, his family, the fans. It was all just the highest standard of being a human being. And ultimately, it was that same mindset that was his downfall and the downfall of Eduardo Rivera and Emilio Macias Jr. And you can't separate those two. All of those things were Jose. At the same time, he had good intentions. And I don't think anybody that got to see him and understand that would doubt that. That's the reason why he was so popular among the fans. That's the reason why he continues to be celebrated so much by the fans. He is one of the favorite players on anybody's list, perhaps the favorite player and the most irreplaceable guy in Marlins history in that regard. So I hope you understand why we feel that he is somebody that should be celebrated, despite the way that things ended for him, both from myself and joined on here by Isaac Azut, Alex Carver from Fish on the Farm, and Kevin Barral as well. We're going to be remembering Jose and all the joy that he brought to people that were watching Marlins baseball for parts of 4 seasons that he was around on and off the field. Kevin, you're the youngest one of us. I think you mentioned that there was only one game that you got to see Jose in person. You may have missed the very beginning of his tenure, but I'm sure you know what made him special. So it's just starting with you. What are some of the things that you remember about Jose and remembering what it felt like to be a Marlins fan just a few years ago when he was still around?
It was great. I mean, knowing this guy was going to come on the mound every 5th day, I think just lit my face up. It lit everyone's face up because let's be honest, the Marlins weren't the greatest. And, Jose just had that energy that everyone wanted. And he brought this new energy to baseball that we didn't see before. I mean, this guy, every time a guy went up to bat, always cheering them on, always celebrating. This guy, it's just crazy to imagine he's not here anymore. And the best part about it is Jose is one hell of a player too. He proved himself. Isaac was mentioning before the show that this guy had never pitched below high A or over high A, which is crazy to say. And he comes in rookie year and just dominates. And if I'm correct, did he get rookie of the year? If I'm correct, yeah. I mean, Jose just showed everything that we wanted to see in a baseball player, and just more than that, helping the community out. I mean, and the story, how he had three tries to defect from Cuba, and from me coming from Cuban parents, knowing how difficult that is. I mean, he really went through it, and then the story of how he saved his mother. He jumped off the boat midway, and he saved his mom. It's crazy to think he's not here anymore, and it's tough to see it happen.
Yeah. Before the show, we we're going through a few memories in our private chat, and I know Isaac got to meet him off the field, and if you could tell us a little bit about what you remember from that experience, that separate from being in a Marlins game, you had a great picture of him that I'll put up in just a moment. But anything you remember about meeting Jose in person in that setting?
Electricity, man. Just an amazing personality that you really don't find often, especially someone that's been through everything that he's gone through, and the way he just like attacked everything. It was just, he's such a nice guy. I was fortunate enough, he would work out in my high school, because when he was recovering from Tommy John, he was rehabbing at Pinecrest Therapy, and he'd go work out in my high school, so I'd see him often, as you guys can see in the photo. And he welcomed any little high schooler, from 9th to 12th, anyone that wanted a photo with him. He said, hey, come here with open arms. And when it comes to like seeing him on the mound, it's just, if you could like make a personality, he'd be the epitome of what you'd want for a pitcher. He's a competitor. He was a competitor, and there was really no one like him. And I don't think we'll ever see anyone that was like Jose.
Yeah, well, Alex, you have a much better context on that than any of us do about whether there's really been anybody like Jose before or since then. As somebody that has followed this team from the very beginning, how would you begin to put that into context? What we've ever seen like this outside of Jose?
Absolutely, it's tough to say that I've ever seen anybody quite like Jose Fernández in terms of how he played and the way that he played. It's just a guy that you look at, and it's somebody that despite how it ended, like you said at the beginning, it's somebody that should be revered and remembered for a long time by everybody in the baseball world. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of guys that you could compare to him, with how much he did in such a short period of time. I mean, the guy, as little as he played here, as young as his career was before he passed away, he's still, I think, 5th in pitcher WAR in Marlins history. So the guy had already done big things, and he was going to do even bigger things. But yeah, just lived life to the absolute fullest is what you can say about Jose Fernández. Knew where he came from, was really, really obsessed with the baseball field. He called it, that was his sanctuary. That was where everything made sense to him, despite what else was going on with him, and just really found love in America and his freedom, as you said at the beginning. So yeah, literally a guy that transcends the baseball world and just what it means to be a great athlete, both on and off the field. I'll never forget him. Amazing guy, amazing kid. Every interaction I had with him was always positive, and I'm sure a lot of fans and other people in media would say the same thing. So miss him every day, man, every single day.
It was so apparent, from the very, very beginning, as in his rookie year, and how all that went. And then these are highlights from his very final game. The final game he pitched against the Nationals, which was right up there with one of the best that he ever pitched. In that moment, they were trying to pull him out in top of the 8th inning, and he insisted on getting through that. And his mom was in attendance that day, and his grandmother as well. And he stepped up in that situation. But every home game was like that. It's really hard to even fathom how automatic he was when he was pitching in Miami. That was really more so than anything that he himself controlled, the way that people responded to him and how it was such a special event whenever he was pitching in Marlins Park at the time. Like, even for teams that, fleetingly they flirted with being good in a couple of those years, but for the most part, these were mediocre teams. And you could see it at the time, and people didn't really care at the time if Jose was pitching, because that was something else. There was 4 out of 5 days when the Marlins were playing, and then there was that 5th day when it was Jose Day, and it just changed. It was a totally different event. It just brought everything up to a new level for so many reasons, man. I miss that.
Yeah, and you really look at it, I mean, he brought something new to the game too. I mean, you would never see a pitcher consistently be good at batting, and Jose really brought that. It's mainly at the end of, but the homer against the Braves, and then he had his first game back from the Tommy John, he had the homer against the Giants. And then he just started consistently being a good hitter. And I remember it was the game against Atlanta. I'm pretty sure went to extra innings. Jose had the RBI, or he had some kind of a hit that really put him in the game. It's just crazy to see how Jose was and how playful he was with all these other guys. In the All-Star game, he walked David Ortiz. It was just a crazy thing. And I remember the Justin Bohr home run when he started smacking the dugout. I think it was like the fence of the dugout. I mean, that's the clip that, you could still see to this day. You could find it anywhere. I mean, Jose was a great guy. And I don't know, and we were talking about this, I think, a couple of days ago. Like, where were you guys the day that he died? And I'll start with you, Isaac. The day you got the news, better said,
Yeah, it's a tough one. 2016, September 25th, it was a Sunday morning, and I was in Davie. I was in my apartment. I was woken up like at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, by my high school baseball group chat. I'd already graduated high school, but we still kept in touch, and it was blowing up. And I see Jose has passed away. So I turn on the TV, and every major media outlet, something's gone horribly wrong when the Marlins are on ESPN, right? So the Marlins were there, and you see Eduardo Perez in tears, and you see Stephen A. Smith in tears, and it's real. And I think one thing that we need to remember is that the ultimate loss is losing your kid. So we definitely send out our thoughts and our prayers to Maritza, Jose's mother, because there's nothing like losing. For us, it's horrible. Imagine being his mother. So yeah, but that's where I was. I was in Davie, and then for the Mets game, I stayed home all day, and I cried an insane amount for the next 48 hours because it was an extremely emotional broadcast by Rich Waltz and Tommy Hutton, and they did really a superb job with that. The whole Marlins, Fox Sports Florida team really did great. And especially you got to give credit to the Mets because they handled that whole situation with class. They met up with the Marlins in the middle of the field. They really handled that situation well. Everyone handled it well. And, just seeing the players so emotional on the field was what got me personally.
Yeah. Alex?
Yeah, so September 25th is actually my sister's birthday, my older sister. It's actually her birthday. So just the irony that somebody that I'm related to that was born on that date, and then Jose was one of my favorite players and passes away that morning. So I woke up and, I wished my sister a happy birthday, and I took off for work. And I was working at a restaurant at the time. And one of our regular patrons was a gentleman named Robert Raymer, who was well connected with the front office with David Sampson and Jeffrey Loria. He used to come in my restaurant every morning to eat breakfast. And my boss came up to me. I was working. My boss came up to me. He was like, "Alex, Jose Fernández died." I was like, "Get away from me, dude. Just go. Get away from me. You stop talking crap. Go away." And he's like, "No, I'm serious." And I was like, "Is Bob here?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay." So I ran out and I looked at him, and he's on his phone. I looked at him. I'm like, "Is that actually true?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's true." So at that point, my stomach dropped to the floor, and I told my boss, I was like, "I can't work anymore. I got to go." So I left. I went home, watched it all day long, which I'm sure you guys did as well. The next day I took off work, and I went to that game. And that was honestly the most unique baseball game that I've ever been a part of. You walked into silence. There was, before the game, no cheering, no organ player, nothing, just memories for Jose all over the place. All the screens had memorials for him. There was the big mural outside, which I signed my name on, and people were leaving flowers and all kinds of other things. And it was a really, really tough day, a tough week. And then my birthday was 2 days later. So, it was just kind of a weird moment for me personally, but yeah, just super unique. And the Marlins did a great job, with how they presented that game, and the Mets did great as well. The D homer landed actually in the section right next to me. So yeah, it's just a really crazy emotional time anytime this time of year comes around.
Yeah, I mean, what's your story here, Eli?
Well, I mean, as Isaac mentioned, it was a Sunday morning, and the date in September 25th. I mean, that's the time of year. It's like my favorite time of year. I mean, I'm a huge baseball guy, obviously, but football as well. And that's one of those beautiful Sundays when they still intersect. So I got up early. I was up, not when the incident happened, but right around sunrise, probably before 7 a.m. And I believe I was doing like my normal Sunday thing where I have a couple screens open. I have my phone open and I have the TV doing some sports thing. And I think I got the news first on my phone on Twitter from a news organization, probably from CNN or something like that, where I saw a tweet that the first thing I saw is that it was suspected to be a Miami Marlins player that was involved in it. That's what I remember first. I remember very vividly following it enough in real time that at first it was already reported a Marlins player was identified, but we didn't have the name. And then it was just over a number of minutes, but obviously it felt like forever. But it must have only been a few minutes between that first news and then, the confirmation when they had permission to put it out that it was Jose. And in between then, my mind was just, scrambling to all the players it could be. And really, Jose's name came to mind as like the one that it absolutely couldn't be him. Like he was that one guy that you held in a whole separate regard that if it was him, I had no idea what I was going to do with myself. And so right after I got that news, like early in the morning, I kind of just sat on my own in disbelief, following whatever live coverage I could get, because I was in no position to really think critically about it or say anything intelligent about it. I was defaulting to people that had more composure, that were on the job. And I think I just spent that whole morning just reacting to it, just listening to people that knew him call into the shows. And I mean, it was miserable. It was miserable for someone like me that I did have an opportunity to see him pitch quite a bit in person, especially in 2014 before the injury, 2015 when he got back, early 2016. I don't know exactly the number, but probably at least 10 starts in person that I saw from him. And honestly, it's just something that made me feel my own mortality too. As someone that is really close in age to what Jose was, and the fact that it could happen to him, as someone that you knew that he would have so many allies in this world. Everybody loved him. Like if there's one person that was going to be taken from us too early, it wouldn't be him, because he was somebody that you would think had all the right people watching out for him. And then, I mean, ultimately that wasn't enough. So it was just really, one of the longest days of my life, just thinking about all that and all the reaction to it when it happened.
Yeah, I remember it pretty well. I think everyone actually remembers this day perfectly. I mean, I was in Philadelphia in a hotel. We were visiting some family up there, and all of us, we're getting ready to go to the house where my family was at, and my uncle sends a text to my dad saying, just showing him the news that Jose died, and my dad just like starts saying like, no way, this can't be, and he just starts sitting down and he tells me, and I'm in disbelief. And we go down to the hotel lobby, and I'm just seeing Eduardo Perez is bawling out, just crying on TV, talking about Jose, and it's something I couldn't believe. And it was just a crazy day. I mean, they canceled the game that day. I mean, it was such a bad day. It was horrible. Like, you couldn't believe this guy, Jose Fernández, at 24 years old, man, dead in a boating accident. And then when I got back from Miami, I went through, you would pass by, and there was like a number 16 on the highway on the, it's like when it's, instead of saying welcome to Miami or whatever, it said Fernandez or JDF number 16. So, it was a crazy day. So I think I'll remember that. And, and many teams actually did ceremonies for him. I think there were a couple teams who put up jerseys of their teams, but with the number 16, and it was a crazy day. I mean, it was a horrible day as a Marlins fan. Probably the worst day, in Marlins franchise history, as you had mentioned at the beginning of your life. So
yeah, a lot of credit to the Mets and how they handled that.
Yeah,
that was the first thing that they played, and obviously, personally, a lot of those players were connected to him. But just every step the organization took to really grieve together, I think that made it a lot easier on the Marlins players, and that made at least that game afterward, for as devastating as it was on September 25th, September 26th is extremely memorable to a lot of fans for the way that game played out, but also just the way it was handled before and afterwards by both the Marlins and the Mets. That was appreciated. And so also a shout out to the real Phil 22 who sent these autograph cards. I think he said that Jose signed these when he was on a rehab assignment in Jupiter, at a time where, how major leaguers are when they rehab. They want to get in and get out and just get their work done so that they can return to the majors. And Jose took the time to sign these cards for him. So I just love that being one of a million different examples of that kind of guy that he was to do that.
Yeah. And
I was there for for one of his rehab games, just to call it out on this. I was actually there for one of the games that he was rehabbing. This was in 2015, of course, with the Hammerheads, and he made his start. And he came out. I think it was only like 3 innings or something. And he comes out, and of course, there's kids all along the line. If you've been to Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium, you know that there's the dugout, and then there's a long line where the tarp is. It goes back, and players have to walk past that to get back into the clubhouse. So he walks out in the middle of an inning. I think it was like the middle of the 4th inning or something. And everybody's clamoring, Jose, can you sign? Jose, can you sign? And he's like, guys, I gotta go stretch. I'll be back. I promise. And he didn't lie. He came back. The game was in like the 8th inning, and he comes back out, goes in the dugout. Game ends. He's the last guy out of the dugout. He stayed there, I want to say, for at least 25 to 30 minutes, signing autographs for everybody that wanted one, taking pictures. I mean, you don't see that. I mean, you see it in a couple guys. You've seen it in a couple guys since then, like Jazz and everybody else. But it's a guy that really loved doing what he did. He loved that he was revered so highly by people, that people thought so highly of him. It meant the world to him. And, you know, he was going to give back to the fans in any way that he could. And I think he really did that. And he would have done that even more, you know, if he were still here. So just a special guy, like I said, on and off the field that just sucks. And like you said, all of us remember him and miss him every single day. So
yeah. I didn't know where I was going to fit this in, but I, of course, uploaded the iconic Tulowitzki catch from, I think this was his rookie year, that when you could see on the camera Tulo's reaction, and then you could see Jose's reaction knowing he caught that line drive heading back into his head. I think that one moment is right up there. We've mentioned some of the other ones, of course, the ones that he did as a hitter, that home run that he also hit his rookie year that was against the Braves. Had all the Braves, Brian McCann and Chris Johnson confronting him on his way around the bases. Yeah. That was great. He had another big hit later on. I think this was probably in 2016 in extra innings where the Marlins were out of position players, and he had to pinch hit in like a tie game in the extra innings, and he had the game-winning hit over there. So, I mean, that's just one thing in particular on the baseball side with him, aside from the obvious, is that as a hitter, you know, they haven't had another pitcher. He'll be like the last good hitting pitcher in Marlins history in the 5 seasons since then. They have not had guys and like on that level. So, and that was obviously as someone that was such an amazing pitcher, like he's not someone that really needed to put in the time and the effort on that side of the ball just to stay in the majors, but he did that and he took it seriously and he was really committed to doing that. There was this story, I probably have it fading from my mind a little bit, that kind of like testified to like how seriously he took his hitting, and how I think it must have been during one of his rehab assignments where he I might have it backwards. I think he pitched poorly, but he hit pretty well like in his game, so he was really happy with the rehab game because at least when he got a couple of bats in, he was doing good, and he was that made it all right. That even though his pitching kind of wasn't up to that same standard, he was so committed to being a great player, which is, even when you look at the numbers that he had as a pitcher, you know, they were among the all-time greats for someone that was just in his early 20s. But it's just little details about him that make you think that, wow, he could have even reached another level, because that's the kind of mindset that he had. He was always trying to get better. He was always looking for edge, and he held himself to that ridiculous standard of like trying to be the best pitcher of his generation.
Yeah. I remember him like Rich Wall, it was so clear how much he loved hitting. He was like always like he asked Dan Jennings when he was the manager, Mike Redmond, and Donnie in that last year, he was like, bro, let me pinch hit for you guys. And like he just really enjoyed like every facet of the game, and it was really admirable how awesome he was.
And you know, when the Marlins classified for the playoffs, which I think it's going to be tomorrow if I'm correct.
Yeah, it's the same day.
Yes.
Yeah, and Mattingly, you know, the first person he said in that interview he thought of was Jose, which was crazy to think, and it's great to think that too, because Jose, I mean, he was really one of the biggest pieces on that team and that franchise, and one of the reasons where, you know, that they are where they are right now today. I mean, he's that guy who really lit up Miami and made these Miami fans really come into the stadium. Eli said Jose Day. I mean, everyone went in there that day. That stadium was packed. You know, I was lucky to be able to watch one game of him pitch, And imagine all the people that want to watch this guy pitch. I mean, that couldn't watch him pitch. And, they heard about him after his death. You talk about this guy, and people think he's like one of the greatest pitchers ever. I mean, this guy was maybe top 5, top 10 Marlins pitcher of all time, and I could even argue top 3 if I really wanted to. But man, it's still crazy to think that Jose is no longer playing baseball in the Marlins uniform. He's not even here anymore. So, as we usually do, we're going to talk about the National Series. I don't even know how we can transition from talking about Jose, because we could talk pretty much the whole stream about Jose, but we have to talk a little bit about the National Series. I mean, I'm going to start off with you, Alex. What went right? What went wrong into this National Series?
What has to go right in this National Series? Is that what you're asking?
I guess, yeah.
Oh, man. I mean, I've said this in the last couple shows. It's just a limp to the finish. I mean, in the National Series, it was tough. I mean, again, we said this a lot with these Marlins finishing the season against these not great teams that, it's just not good baseball being played. It's not really entertaining anymore to watch the Marlins. I hate to say it, but it's really not. So, I mean, I don't know what more we can say at this point. I guess Trevor was better. I guess we could say that. He goes into the 6th inning. Vila looked a little bit better than last time out, so I guess that was good. The game that they won, that was an entertaining game just based off of how it ended. So that was pretty fun to see them actually get one when it looked like, they maybe were going to get swept if they would have lost that game. So, yeah, good to see them get one, I guess. Luzardo was not good again. So, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to find positives anymore, really, for me personally. And it's just a limp to the finish. I said it to you guys last time. I wish this season would just end already, and now we got to go face Tampa. So, yeah, just get the season over with. That's my mindset at this point.
Isaac, I mean, what did you think really about Trevor? I mean, we all expected the Marlins to just destroy the Nationals, and that did not happen at all.
I didn't.
No, not all of us.
Well, not you.
Isaac was
Yeah,
on it.
actually, not you. Most.
Alex and I were realistic and accurate, but this series, I was fortunate maybe unfortunate enough to cover Wednesday's game, where Eliezer just got rocked. He did not look good at all. The positives were maybe Nick Fortes staying hot and Sandy Leon homering right. And then by far, this was Trevor's best start of the second half. So that was definitely encouraging. I was watching it at a restaurant downstairs, and he was just pumping 97. He had spotty defense behind him. So that's sort of where the game got away from him. But Trevor looked great, and I don't think there's anything more important than that. But, yeah, they lost sort of 3. And, it doesn't really matter at this point. So now we're just sort of excited about the Tampa Bay Rays and seeing a really, really good team up close and personal.
Yep. Eli, not the best series. I don't think there are any positives really to talk about besides the first game. But, I mean, and Trevor. But, if you
ever since the trade deadline passed, I was holding on to this idea that the Marlins would definitely finish ahead of the Nationals in the standings. And if you remember, there were like 4 games back of the Nats at the time, maybe even 5. At the deadline. So the fact that at the moment, they're still ahead of the Nationals and it still looks possible, I guess I get a tiny bit of credit for that. But yeah, I did not see them losing this series. Just a lot of credit has to go to Juan Soto, man. He is on another level, even by his own standards, even by the standards he said last year. I mean, last year he was probably the best individual player in the game when he was healthy. And then this year he got off to, by his standards, a really shaky first half. And ever since he got back, especially from the trade deadline, as soon as it's incredible that it just speaks to like how in the grand scheme of things, an individual player doesn't change a whole lot. Like he's been amazing. And yet the Nats overall, since the deadline, they've been even worse than the Marlins. They've been terrible. But in the course of like a series, when it's just 3 games, in terms of just winning 2 games all by himself, he kind of did that. He won 1 game for sure, all by himself. Absolutely. The one where he reached base 5 times on his own. And I can't even wrap my mind around that. I would guess that no Marlins player has done that this year, reached base 5 times in a single game. So for him to be able to do that, for him, that's just Tuesday. He just calls that Tuesday, or he just calls it Wednesday or whatever. So the more I see of him, the more I am just wowed by him. And it does put into perspective that although the Marlins have had a lot of good stories this year, especially among their young guys, including Trevor, including Jazz. Those guys stick out, including Brian De La Cruz. I mean, all of them are 1, 2, maybe 3 levels below Juan Soto as individual players. The Marlins do not have their Soto. And Kevin, you just like updated your prospect rankings and all that. There are good guys in there, but there's nobody in the organization right now that you point to and you're like, that guy can really carry the franchise. And I mean, that's going to be a long-term question that they have to obviously address once we get past the season. Trying to find that guy or develop that guy, it's hard. It's very, very hard.
Yeah.
One thing to point out, Kevin, is this had to be the bright spot of the series for me, and I forgot about it somehow while I was talking. But that catch by Jesus Sanchez, like, can we talk about you guys that maybe have played before or even gone into an outfield to play softball in the outfield or whatever? That is so hard to do. Like, the fact that he overran it and then literally stopped and reached behind his head to catch that ball, that's amazing. That's something that I don't think I've ever seen done in a baseball game. So I know Eli's been all about hyping that up on the Fish Stripes Twitter, and for very good reason. But, man, call attention to that. There's your bright spot of the series, that catch by Jesus Sanchez.
Joining us, John Rodriguez from the All Marlins account. My man, how are you? You weren't here for the Jose segment, so I'll let you talk a little bit about Jose here. I mean, we could really talk about Jose the whole live stream if we really wanted to, but just go fire off, man. Jose.
Yeah, man, you said it. It's definitely a tough topic for me. Coming from a Cuban American background, it really hits me deep. You could probably sense it in my tone of voice. It's probably my favorite Cuban-born baseball player of all time. We're talking about a guy who touched hearts, touched fans, touched coaches, touched everybody. He's touched me. He would come to me pregame. He would talk to me. As a kid at the time, it's amazing. He was a great guy, great fan guy, great overall player. Not only great pitcher, you could talk about his hitting. He had like Dontrelle Willis type hitting. Definitely up there, dude. He was lights out. If he had maybe stuck around a bit more, I'd say he surpasses Josh Johnson, in my opinion, as the greatest Marlins pitcher of all time. He was phenomenal. That's what I got. It's difficult, dude. I was bawling out earlier because someone sent me the link to the video where the team gathers around the mound.
Yeah.
Oh man, that I was in that game. I was losing it. It was tough.
Yeah, I think that's the part that really hit everyone when they all got around the mound and Dietrich said to throw the hats in the middle. Yeah, that was just. And
then the
wild.
fans started chanting, "Jose, Jose, bro." That man, it hits.
Yeah. It's just crazy to think he's no longer here, man. And we could really talk the whole stream about Fernández, but we kind of have a series to get to here. Tampa Bay Rays made the playoffs. They're looking hot. I mean, what can you tell me about Tampa Bay? They got a young guy in Wander Franco. Nelson Cruz, they got him in the trade deadline. And then Shane Baz made his debut just a couple days ago. I mean, what do you got, man?
They're just a team that they do it right, man. They're just a team that continuously gets better and better and better throughout the season. Not only year by year, but they call up Wander Franco when they're already one of the best teams in the division, probably the best team in the division. They call up Shane Baz. They call up the other speedster, Vidal Brujan. They just call up all these guys who are major league ready, and they know that they're going to perform. And that's just something that the Marlins, they've done to some extent, but the Rays, they know how to run an organization, man. And it's really great to see. David Sampson says many times that we were always envious of the Rays and how they did things and how they just built a ball club with maybe even more money problems than the Marlins do. So it's gonna be a fun series probably for the Rays. It's gonna be great to see Wander Franco, one of the bright young stars in baseball, up close. And yeah, that's about it. Hopefully the Marlins don't get completely outmatched, but it should be a fun series to watch nonetheless.
Eli, I mean, you look at the Rays, and just when you thought they were not going to qualify for the playoffs, losing Charlie Morton, trading away Blake Snell, and then at the beginning of the season, losing Glasnow, I mean, they somehow managed to do it. I mean, what are your thoughts on that and just the way they do things? I mean, it's kind of like what the Marlins want to do, but they just can't do it whatsoever. So I mean, what do you got?
I got fooled. I was with a lot of people that when I saw they were too cheap to bring back Morden and that they sold off Snell, I thought they would be worse. I thought there was no way they would be at the same level they were last year. They still had a lot of great players. I knew that they still had arguably the very best farm system and that Franco was coming, and he's been great. And the timing is just ridiculous. He'd been out the last couple of weeks with a hamstring injury, but now just in time, he's back on the team and back in the lineup. It's been amazing. Like you go to people that follow the team closely, and there really hasn't been any individual guy that has stepped into the shoes of the starters that were missing. I mean, Tyler Glasnow was having the best year of his career, but then he got hurt. So it's just been this constant influx of guys. And there are a couple guys that I want to talk about on the pitching side because they're very familiar names to Marlins fans. The ones that get the attention are the rookies like Shane Baz and Shane McClanahan, who's actually been up for most of the year, and we'll be seeing him, Luis Patino, and all that. But it's really, the bullpen is amazing too, because they've had a lot of injuries. They've not had a lucky season. They've been missing a lot of guys that they were counting on coming out of spring training. A lot of the guys that were key for them in the postseason last year have not been good or have not been healthy this year. So they've been plucking guys out of total obscurity, including someone like Adam Conley, who got called up in the middle of the season. And he is like a low 2s ERA for them all of a sudden. He's not pitching important innings, but he's having the best stretch that he's had in several years of his career, just because he's under their magic fairy dust or whatever you want to call it. It's been incredible, the kind of guys that they've plucked from other organizations, journeymen like JT Chargois, like traded from the Brewers to get JP Fireisen, and all of a sudden he's among their leaders in innings pitched, even though nobody had ever heard of him, prior to that trade and all that. Every single guy that they bring up is pretty solid. That might be the one difference between them and like every other team, is that they really do go 25, 30 deep in terms of major league quality arms, because they know they're going to need all those guys during the season, and they find ways to bring out the best in them.
Yeah. Alex, Eli talked a little bit about some of the pitching, Patino, Baz, and you really do cover the minors a lot. I mean, what can you tell us on these guys? And as well as Wander Franco. I mean, the guy was the number 1 prospect in baseball until he got pretty much called up, and now he's graduated. So, I mean, what can you tell us on all these really young guys that the Rays have?
Yeah, so Franco's incredible. I saw him play a lot against, I think it was against the Shrimp this year, because I think he was in AAA. Man, that guy is 5-tool all the way. He's going to be really, really good for them. And he's the number 1 prospect in baseball for a reason, because he brings everything. He's good in the field. He's good at the plate. He's got power. He's got hit. He's got everything. So, yeah, I think he's eventually going to be a very, very good player. I think he sticks at shortstop. He'll be really, really good. And then the other ones, man, Eli kind of talked about that trade with the Blake Snell trade. They got back 2 fantastic pieces in that trade. Like, I know they only got, I think, like per evaluators, they were not giving them an A for that trade, but man, I think they got a huge A for that trade, especially getting back Patino, who, by the way, is from my buddy Daniel DeVivo's hometown of Barranquilla, so he talks about him a lot. And then with Mejia, who has already done well with the bat. I think he has 6 homers and he's slugging over 400 as a catcher. The Marlins would really like to have something like that right now. But anyways, maybe they have it in Nick Fortes. Who knows? But really, really good young team. And as Eli said, they know how to do it. The way that they scout players is incredible. They know when to give up on guys, which usually works out for them. If a guy's not performing, they're not afraid to say, hey, you know what? You're cut. And they do it all the time. And most of the time, we've mentioned this before, they're right about it. Sometimes they miss, but they're not afraid to move on from players who aren't performing. And that's what they have. The main thing that they have that the Marlins don't have. So that's your biggest difference between them as a small market team and the Marlins as a small market team. They know when to move on. They know when to say enough is enough, and we're getting in new blood. So maybe one day the Marlins will follow suit. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, they got a great young team, man. Good young core and some veterans around it. It's a great team, and they could go far this year for sure.
That's exactly where I wanted to go with John. I mean, how can the Marlins be more like the Rays? And I think Alex pretty much answered the first half, and we know the obvious guys who should go. But, I mean, how can they be more like the Rays, man? We need to know.
I think Alex did pretty much kind of put the general spectrum out there in terms of, what the Marlins should do as an organization, especially being a small market team. They definitely need to, know when is the time to cut ties with guys. Personally, I love Lewis Brinson. Don't get me wrong, I love this guy. He's a great guy, great heart. He's good for the team, good for the city, but he's just not. He hasn't produced. He hasn't really given us actual good numbers that indicate, hey, this is the five-tool player that we were looking for the future. But it's come to the point where we just need to cut. We need to move on. Magneuris Sierra is another guy. He's been in this club for how long? I think Mish tweeted it out.
Or
Four,
he's in
right?
his 4th year. He's in his 4th year.
And he was talking about how Miguel Cabrera played here for what, 5?
Yeah.
So we have to know when it's time to really cut ties with guys. And the whole thing about giving guys a shot is perfect. Look at Fortes. Sure, you could call me out and say, hey, he's only had 10 at bats and he's not going to be the biggest thing in the world. But if you're giving guys a shot, who you have at least a sample to work with moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. They called up Fortes, and not everyone is going to go 6 for 10 with 3 homers. Like, not everyone's going to do that. But sometimes it will. Like, some things will hit. And like a Brigman, we don't know. It maybe would have hit. Maybe he goes through, like 10 for 40 to finish the year. But we're just, it's a shame that we won't know. Maybe they have their reasons that he's not ready defensively, which I didn't get to say last time on the stream. That's horse jockey. That's straight, that's the biggest lie I've ever heard in my life. That's for a reason. If you want to tell us that, you don't want to call him up for a trade, but whatever, that's fine. But don't lie to our faces and say that it's defensive reasons when you have Alfaro playing left field and you have and Isan Diaz. He's been good. He's been smooth, but he's made a few errors at third base. So that is just straight cap, as the millennials say. But yeah, that's just frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, we said this so many times. We can't say it many more times. They got to cut ties with like a lot of these guys, mainly the bench depth. And I'm not even going to name the guys again. We all know who they are. The viewers know who they are. And the biggest one I think they should get rid of right now is Isan Diaz, Jorge Alfaro. They kind of already got rid of Isan. They threw him in AAA again in September. Ethan, really said that getting thrown down in AAA in September, it ain't that good. That's what we'll leave it at. And John mentioned Nick Fortes, and I think we're going to get to him a little bit here, him and Peyton Henry. I mean, we all assume the Marlins are going to go after a big-time catcher in the offseason, either if it's a Jacob Stallings, if it's a Wilson Contreras, or et cetera, whoever it could be. Tucker Barnhart, I know we've mentioned that one. We mentioned Yan Gomes, whoever it is. I mean, who do you guys see as the backup? Because the Marlins do have options. You have Alex Jackson, who's been horrible. You have Nick Fortes. You have Peyton Henry. Somehow Sandy Leon might actually come back on this team next season to help the young guys. I'm going to start with you, John. I mean, who do you think could be that backup catcher for the Marlins?
I'm going Team 305. Bring in Fortes. Give the guy a shot. If he continues these good numbers, whether it's not hitting 3 home runs and 10 at bats every single time, so far he's given us good stuff. I think he just has to work a bit more on the pass balls. But I heard that he's been having good stuff in AAA with them. So I think he is, in my eyes, the backup ideal catcher. Keep Henry in AAA and see how he does. And if Fortes doesn't work, bring in Henry. Try to do like a little hybrid system kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to slander Nick Fortes at all, because he's been a great story. He's been a guy I've been monitoring like the whole year. Like, it was pretty early in the year where you could see there was something interesting going on offensively that wasn't there before. I do want to point out the guys that he is doing this damage against, the ones he has home runs against. The first one was Bryce Wilson, who was kind of discarded by the Braves after pitching in the postseason for them last year, but it speaks to the fact that they were in contention and they traded him to the Pirates. So that was one home run. The other one against Josh Rogers, who is great against everybody else on the Marlins, but is not a great pitcher overall. He was released by the Orioles just a few months ago. And then the most recent one was against Ryan Harper, not Bryce Harper, Ryan Harper, different guy, not an MVP caliber pitcher. These are all, I just don't think there's a whole lot of difference between what he's hitting right now and what he's doing in AAA. Now, if he was doing this in AAA, if he had 3 home runs in 5 games in AAA, we'd be really excited about that. So it is a good development no matter any way you slice it. In terms of actually putting any weight on the numbers he's putting up right now, I don't think he could do it. It's just the sample is too small and the competition he's facing is too down low. We've talked about some of these like catching targets before this year. Ever since Mish came on, we've been talking about Jacob Stallings because that was the one that Mish is kind of willing the Marlins to get him. That has not been like a real rumor. That is a Mish creation. Mish loves Stallings, and he correctly points him out as a guy that could fit in from a number of different levels. I'm not as sold just because this is actually Stallings' first year as a full major league season starting catcher, full-length season. He did last year, but that was a shortened year. He's 32 years old, and this is the first time doing it over the course of a full year. It's not a great track record. I'm someone that I'm really still like obsessed with Wilson Contreras. I think he's the great guy. If what's tricky is that he just has one more year until free agency, it'd have to be one of those situations where you figure out an extension with him before next season even begins, and certain players aren't down for that. But so it's a tricky, there's no perfect fit to me. There are guys like that. And then you go further down the list. I like Jan Gomes a lot as well. He's going to be a free agent. That's a big difference, but he is even older than Stallings for sure. And he's at a phase of his career where I think you have to expect a little bit of decline every single year. It's a hard time to be looking for a major league catcher. And that just goes back to the decision to trade Real Muto in the first place and kind of looking around the league and knowing that Real Muto was already the top catcher in baseball, which all credit to him. That's great. But it's kind of speaks to more the fact that these last few years across the majors, it's been a tough time to find good starting catcher. It's a very small group. And the ones that are like awesome, Salvador Perez, Will Smith on the Dodgers, those guys are not going to be available anyway.
Yep. I mean, Isaac, who's your guy? I mean, you could really go any way here when it comes to who's going to be that backup because, I mean, let's say they don't get a backup. They don't get a Wilson Contreras or a Jacob Stallings, which we pretty much are praying they do. I mean, they really need it. I mean, who would be that starter and who would be the backup in this scenario?
Well, if we go into next season and there's no new catcher, that's just
we're not winning games, but you know.
But assuming that they don't do that, and they see what Fortes is doing, and they're saying, you know what, he's a starter. Let's see if they were to do that. I mean, you'd have to go with Alfaro again if there's no one else. And one of Fortes, I think for the backup, you usually like to have a defensive-minded catcher for the backup position. So Sandy Leon, wouldn't be a bad option. He's just so bad offensively that it's almost like an automatic out. I know he homered the other day, but he really does add value with the way he catches these guys, these young guys, and they love him. They love, throwing to him. So he'd be the backup, but they will be bringing someone in, no doubt about it.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great showing from Nick Fortes. Definitely, I've said this to you guys before. I found it with the bat, definitely this year. Really good. I think it was a really great month of June. But after that, he's kind of hot and cold. I mean, he's a catcher, so you can kind of expect the offense to be limited. But it's been a lot better than it has been so far in his career. So he's definitely found something, and he even said to us that he thinks he's a completely different player, and it definitely shows in the way that he's hitting for sure. The pass balls thing, I wouldn't put a lot. Eli says not to put a ton of stock into the small sample size, and he's right. I think you have to consider also the pass balls in that. This is a guy that's just now considering how to. Thank you, Isaac Edelman, by the way. This is a guy that's just now learning how to catch major league pitching. He's learning how to catch elite stuff. So you got to let him work it out. And this is a great time to let anybody work out the kinks in their game. That's what September is made for, especially when you're not in the playoffs. Definitely when you're not in the playoffs. So, yeah, I think that's going to be fine. He's known for his receiving skills. He's really, really good at receiving pitchers. I've said it to you guys as well that catchers, when he was catching in Jupiter in 2019, including Trevor Rogers, raved about his receivability skills and how he catches the ball and calls pitches. So I think he's defense first, as a lot of catchers are. But the back coming around is definitely a good sign. I think he has a good shot to win that job as the backup catcher next year, because you're definitely not going to have 3 catchers or 4 catchers on the roster again. So he's got a chance for sure. And I really like this showing that he's put on. So that's on that. Who do you want? Who do I want? Like as in a trade, it has to be Stallings because of the control. I mean, Contreras, as Eli said, would be great. The Marlins had a chance to get him last season and didn't do it because they didn't want to give a Peyton Burdick. Maybe they revisit that. Could happen, but you have to go into that with the mindset of getting that guy on paper, right? That has to be you have to know that you can sign him if you're going to make that trade, especially for prospect package that Chicago would probably want. So, yeah, for the safety's sake, the control's already there with him. I think he's a little younger too. So I would go Jacob Stallings as my main guy that I would want. But can't argue with Contreras, man. That guy's one of the best offensive catchers in the league. But if you're going to pick one, I say Stallings. And then if you want to talk about a lesser guy, I've talked about Tucker Barnhart before. So those would be my two top guys, a top tier and lower mid tier.
There is one other subject I wanted to squeeze in here as we get a little too close to first pitch, is how this is going to be the first potential meeting between Nick Anderson and Jesus Sanchez, who were traded for each other at the deadline in 2019. And that trade was overshadowed because like a minute later, we had the Zach Gallen Jazz Chisholm blockbuster, and it kind of overshadowed it. And I think it has ever since then has been overshadowed. But Nick Anderson, he had that great first half of his rookie year with the Marlins, but as a relief-only guy, as a guy in his late 20s already. And it was a really interesting trade, both him and Trevor Richards going to the Rays for Jesus Sanchez and Ryan Stanek. And so Ryan Stanek really backfired. Jesus Sanchez didn't do much, his first year and a half in the organization because he was injured late in 2019. And then for 2020, we know how bad he was for his limited opportunity. And that was aging really poorly when Nick Anderson was pitching in the World Series for the Rays just like 1 year ago. And it's amazing like how quickly that has turned out, because Nick Anderson hasn't been a part at all of what the Rays are doing this year. They've done all this despite him because he was injured. And since he's come back from injury, we're going to see it firsthand. He is a shell of his former self. He has not gotten that velo back. As dominant as he was, the first 2 years of his career, this is kind of why you don't hold on to relievers no matter how awesome they look, is because it's so hard to keep this up for a long term when you're a guy like that. So I know Isaac was kind of lit up when I mentioned that. Any thoughts about how that trade is aged now from what it was in 2019 to what it's looking like now that Jesus is the everyday cleanup hitter for the Marlins?
We spoke about it a little bit on the pod as one of those, overshadowed trades that really is going to come back to look like a Marlins win. Nick Anderson was dominating with the Rays. He was dominating with the Marlins, pitching the most meaningful of baseball games last October for the Rays. And yeah, you're right, Eli. He hasn't come back well at all this year. I'm not sure why. But that just shows you how fickle relief pitchers can be. And I agree 100%. You should never put too much, capital into any relief pitcher, even if it's, Kenley Jansen, because you look at that guy struggling. So you look at Marlins guys like Kyle Barraclough and AJ Ramos. The Marlins like to hold on to those guys, and they end up, instead of shitting the bed on another team, they shit the bed with us, and then they lose their value. Like Anthony Bender maybe was someone who I would have considered trading, but he kind of shit the bed with us already before we got to trade him. But yeah, no, he's absolutely right that Nick Anderson has not pitched well this year for the Rays. Surprisingly so, because I thought he was a really good pitcher. And he came from the Twins, I think. So that was a good find for the Marlins at the time.
Yeah. We did talk about this on the pod, which was coming out tonight midnight. The Marlins really did well with this trade. I mean, you get Jesus Sanchez, who now is your everyday right fielder. Reliable at bat. He's been okay defensively. I mean, that catch was pretty good. It was actually a really good catch when you look at it. He's been solid overall. I think, if you just work on the defense, I mean, I wouldn't be, I would actually be really happy with what the Marlins have gotten. Nick Anderson at the time, I didn't know really. I knew who the guy was. I knew he was pretty good with the Marlins. Not much more to say after that. I mean, the guy gets traded and he starts pitching pretty well for the Braves. This season, he has not been, the Nick Anderson we remember of 2019 and 2020 during the pandemic season. So, yeah, I mean, and then the Jazz Chisholm Zach Gallen trade. That one was one I was really mad about at the time. But then, you look at Jazz, and I think it's worked out pretty well for the Marlins. And quickly on the catchers, I was going to make like a really long analogy. I'm going to keep it really short. Alex Jackson's the name who got traded for Adam Duvall. The Marlins had Isan Diaz. They had all these guys who and Mish said it. They put him pretty much to they've given them so many chances, and they're putting them to the point where they're worth pennies. And I think that's what they're going to do with Alex Jackson, man. I think he's going to be the backup. On my article, I wrote about this, and I said it was going to be Sandy Leone because of the young guys, 6 toes back next season. Edwards going to be in there. Maybe Max Myers is up in the major leagues, maybe at some point in the season. They're going to want him to work with the young guys. So it's either Sandy. I love Nick Fortes. I think he could really be the backup. Same thing with Peyton Henry. I mean, it's anyone's job to win at that point, or anyone's to lose. So we'll see what happens in that case. So I think we're gonna go into prediction time, Eli. I think that sounds good. We're gonna go with John here. Quickly, any last words on Jose or anything we've discussed today, and then your prediction.
Man, something for me that would be very magical is to take the series from the Rays. Though personally, I don't really see it happening. But hey, if they could carry in a win at least, tomorrow, it's not only Jose's, anniversary since the day the thing happened, but it's also the day that we also come together as a fan base and we remember, hey, we had playoff baseball for the first time in 17 years. That would be an amazing day to win a ball game and say, hey, we could collect ourselves and we could dedicate the day to Jose and we could feel better about ourselves. And yeah, I think I'm not really sure who are the pitching probables for this series.
I'll tell you right now.
It's Edward, it's Sandy, and then Luzardo on the Marlins side.
Yeah.
Oh man, Sandy's pitching in game 2?
Yep.
Oh, that would be the day. That would be the day. Because if I remember correctly,
He was the one who pitched.
Sandy pitch
The clincher last year, the same date. Yep.
Oh
exactly.
wow, that right there would be magical. That would put the cherry on top once again. I said it last year. I'll say it again. If we take one of 3 and take it on Jose's anniversary, hey, I'm a happy fan. That'll cap it off.
Isaac, same thing to you. Any last words on Jose or anything really we've talked about today, and your season and your prediction for this series?
Well, yeah, one more thing on what John was saying. Tampa is where Jose went to high school, so Jose is from there. So it would be that'd be really kind of cool if they go out there and they win. One little quick thing I wanted to mention on Jose, just sort of that illustrates like the type of guy he was, is a very brief story. It was my birthday, and I was sitting there as a 14-year-old because I guess I was still asking for baseballs. And I was sitting in the row A where you can basically touch the roof of the dugout, right? And you can like hear the players talk and everything. And I was asking for it. I was like, oh, throw me a ball, Jose. And he ignores me. And I'm like, it's my birthday. And he like turns around and he looks at me. He's like, yeah, right. Like, you're bullshitting me. Without hesitation, I grab my wallet and I throw it at him. I give him a perfect chest pass in the dugout. And I thought I'm going to get kicked out. And like, it's a laminated card holder, so you can see the license, like my birthday, without having to take anything out. He looks at it, and then he like for 10 seconds, and he takes it into the tunnel and into the clubhouse. And my dad is like freaking out at me, and my brother-in-law is like, Isaac, you're gonna get us kicked out of here. And then like 3 to 4 at bats later, I'm like, shit, do I need to cancel my cards or something? I was nervous. Jose Fernández had my wallet, and he comes back out like 3 to 4 batters later, and he throws me the wallet, and he throws me a baseball, and I look at it, and he signed the baseball, and he also put happy birthday on the baseball. And I was just like, dude, and I didn't really care about like the ball or the autograph. It was just like that interaction I had with him, like throwing him my wallet. He held my wallet for that long. It was just like a very cool moment in my life for sure with him. And I say the Marlins lose 2 out of 3.
Eli, what's your prediction here?
Be more optimistic. The Rays, as you may have noticed, they just clinched a playoff berth. I mean, the motivation isn't really there. It's inevitable that they're also going to win the division. There's just not a lot at stake for them right now. I think this is the time of year where they're already trying to figure out their playoff roster. Imagine having that problem, like being able to use like the last week and a half of the season to figure out which of their fringe guys actually belong on the roster. So I think they're going to like be using some guys that aren't at their best. Like they're going to consciously potentially sacrifice some games. I mean, we've seen all year the Marlins, they take winnable games and they piss them away. Like they don't take advantage of them at all. I'm going to be optimistic and say that the Marlins do take 2 of 3. Let's say the last 2, losing tonight, but then doing enough these last 2 to a nice feel-good weekend.
Yeah, I think everyone wants a good feel weekend here, especially for the Marlins. I mean, losing 2 out of 3 to the Nationals is not good. You know, they're literally in the cellar of this division.
I should mention that Alex's prediction was that the Marlins get swept.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to go with that too. The Marlins are going to get swept. I think it's the first Marlins get swept prediction I've made. So hopefully it either goes really bad, which I hope it does, or it goes exactly how I predicted. But yeah, Tampa's a really good team. and we're gonna see the prospect Baz. I'm excited to see what happens here. And my camera froze. Oh, never mind, I'm back. Yeah.
No,
anything-
we're also going to see McLan and Baz. It'll be a fun series to watch. No matter what, it's going to be some fun pitching matchups. The Marlins have Edward, Luzardo, and Sandy going. It's going to be I'm going to be watching all 3 games for sure.
Not just that, but we're gonna get some pretty big competition on him because we've been seeing Pittsburgh, Nationals, Mets, Phillies, Braves. We're finally gonna get a team from the American League. We're gonna see the Marlins roll out with a DH for 3 games. It's maybe this may be the most exciting series in September, to be honest with you guys. I mean, I'm really excited for it. I hope you guys are as well. Make sure to subscribe, follow John on Instagram, Isaac, Eli, myself. Alex as well, who wasn't here for a while. So yeah, my name is Kevin. Make sure to tune in to Fish Stripes Unfiltered. Drops midnight on YouTube. I think it should be out on on all podcast formats.
Yes, sir.
The next day as well. So we had Ethan on there. It was a good conversation. We talked a lot about 2017, the trades that they made. We revisited that. Ethan talked about the Marlins. So yeah, can't wait for that. Yeah, we'll see you guys on the next one, which will be on Tuesday, Mets versus Marlins. It'll be the last series of the year in New York. So can't wait for that. Yeah, see you guys on the next one. Go Fish. Enjoy the game.
Rest in peace, Jose. We miss you.
Yeah.